Bitcoin needs to be banned because it's complete nonsense. And as soon as there are no new buyers, the price will crash. Massive Bitcoin attack from Prof. Dr. Hans-Werner Sinn and Prof. Dr. Bofinger, who is really going hard against Bitcoin and is philosophizing about a potential Bitcoin ban. Why Bitcoin should be banned here or why it shouldn't be banned. This clip has now been shared in X and sent to me with a request for an assessment, because there is a lot of Bitcoin misinformation in a very, very short compressed clip that we definitely have to watch. Because what's being argued here and how Bitcoin is being framed into a corner is definitely not okay. Because I actually appreciate the work of Professor Dr. Hans-Werner Sinn, who really does provide clarification. Dr. Hans-Werner Sinn, who really does provide clarification. How debt problems and how states are massively over-indebted. How to cover up any problems with the money printing press. He also has his work here, The Marvelous Multiplication of Money, which ultimately explains exactly that. Just like how manipulation happens here with implicit debts, explicit debts, and all that stuff. But now they're addressing Bitcoin, and there are definitely some things that are being misunderstood here. If actually Professor Dr. Hans-Werner Sinn should be smart enough to put 2 and 2 together. Now we're going to take a look at the highly controversial statements, and in the end, I'll give you a little assessment. Do fingers with sense. Bitcoin and the like. Ban it.
Bitcoins are basically a way to dumb down people. They're using computers in Iceland to calculate some rare numbers at a high cost. Whoever finds one has a Bitcoin, sells it on for real money. The buyer hopes to find other buyers. More and more people are getting in. The price goes up and people hope to get rich. But eventually the end is near. If there aren't any new buyers, then the price crashes. Many have become rich and many have become poor. Complete nonsense.
So I think there are 2 things. On one hand, you're absolutely right. This whole process, this mining, is a disaster. As far as energy is concerned, the whole thing is just being done to turn something that is objectively worthless into something that seems valuable. Bitcoin is like writing 100 Frankencoin on paper and finding someone to exchange it for 100 euros. People would think you're crazy, but through a complex process, it suddenly seems valuable. But by going through this whole complex process, people suddenly feel like it's something valuable. Where I might see it differently, that's something that's valuable. Where I might see it differently, the question is whether this really has to lead to a trend like that the price is going to zero. You could maybe compare it a bit to the model of an artist. The one who now paints something on a worthless canvas with relatively cheap paint and still gets 1,000 euros for it, just because people believe it's something valuable. 1,000,000. You get euros for it just because people believe it's something valuable.
Well, I see it more like a chain letter, like the ones we had in school. You write the letter to 10 other people, each one is supposed to pay 1 euro to you and has the right to send the letter to 10 others as well. So everyone hopes to win 9 euros. But in the end, doesn't the game just go on forever? Because then there are way too many people. The end has come. When the neighbor is already saying it's great to get in there, that you can make profits. Because then there are no new people anymore who can get in. And we saw that. That was back in December, the price dropped to half. Many, many regular people have become poor because of it, while other speculators have gotten rich. This thing should be banned.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, and I'm surprised that you want to ban it. Because if you look at it from a market economy perspective, you could say Bitcoin is the model of currency competition. Why should only the states be allowed to issue money? Why shouldn't private individuals do that too? That's exactly what the Nobel Prize winner Hayek suggested. For me, it's clear that you shouldn't use Bitcoin to bypass government regulations on money laundering, so that drug money can be freely traded around the world. To bypass government regulations on money laundering, that drug money is being freely traded around the world. That shouldn't be allowed. That should be banned. But basically, the idea of Bitcoin is something that, in my view, shouldn't be banned.
The profit from money creation that's happening here is huge, and it actually belongs to the central bank. Because when money is needed, they could just print it and circulate it to finance the states. Or do something else meaningful with it.
So, I'm really speechless about the statements that have been made here. and also the way the arguments are being made here. I mean, to be honest, you have to say that the clip isn't exactly brand new. It's a few days old. It was actually just shared again on social media, and also in our Telegram group and stuff. And a lot of people got pretty worked up about this clip, which is why we're doing this reaction now. It could also be that the positions of Bofinger and Hans-Werner Sinn have changed a bit by now. But I actually did some research. From Hans-Werner Sinn, there are very, very few statements about Bitcoin. There's nothing recent or anything like that. But it doesn't really matter because in the end, it's being implemented. That Bitcoin isn't really money at all. That means there are so many statements that you don't really know where to start. At the beginning, Hans-Werner Sinn says that basically Bitcoin isn't really money. And then I just have to ask myself how he comes to that conclusion that Bitcoin isn't really money. So Bitcoin is actually the purest form of money. That means money is ultimately created through a market process. That means people use it voluntarily, and actually anything can be money. Cigarettes can be money. What do I know? Whatever. Here, even the grass. Here, money can be. Here, the tree can potentially be money. It's obviously very, very bad money because the tree here rots very, very quickly. Or the grass here, it rots very, very quickly. It's obviously not valuable either because it kind of grows like weeds. And then, for example, here's a motorcycle. Here, a motorcycle would be a bit better. But it's not optimal either because it also doesn't have the optimal properties for money. Because it's also, let's say, it's not very durable. And because it's just so easy to replicate. And then there are things like gold, which is already better, silver. And then there are things like Bitcoin, which actually has even better properties. And that's why I don't understand how here. It comes down to the fact that Bitcoin isn't really considered real money. So I mean, Bitcoin even has properties that you can't find anywhere else. That means nowhere. Otherwise, there's an absolute limit that's only found with Bitcoin. So you could almost say that Bitcoin is the truest form of money that exists, because it is virtually the most counterfeit-proof money and also the least reproducible money that exists at all. And then he talks about things like, yeah, you hope to get rich. And then he kind of dives into Maurice Hofgen's greater fools theory, that you always need new buyers to keep participating in this Ponzi scheme. So that means if all of a sudden the buyers disappear and if just here, then that no one buys Bitcoin anymore because no one believes in the story anymore. Bofinger is also involved in that everything basically depends on one huge belief system. As long as people believe in it, it works. Without fools or dumb people buying Bitcoin, the price will crash. Those who buy Bitcoin. Then the price just crashes to the ground. So it's just a hope that you find a sucker, a bigger fool, who buys the Bitcoin from you for even more money. Then, of course, a few nuclear attacks are thrown out. Like Bitcoin is complete nonsense and stuff. Yeah. We don't even need to go into that anymore. But the interesting thing is, even if there are no new buyers for Bitcoin, I mean, even if Bitcoin just stays, let's say, static, we're just in the network where we currently are, even then, Bitcoin would still work. So that means the Ponzi scheme always needs new people, like, desperately. Bitcoin wouldn't even necessarily need new people. And even if, let's just say, the current buying pressure stays the same, the Bitcoin price would still go up. Because the supply is just getting smaller and smaller. That's what a lot of people don't get. And then there's a massive attack on Bitcoin mining. Yeah. The mining thing is a disaster. When it comes to energy, in the end, it's not understood here either. That mining is the heart and soul of Bitcoin, the proof of work algorithm. Because otherwise, you might as well just go back to paper money, where you can just print it straight from the printing press. And you can see that. What happens when you can just print money straight from the printing press. To how many problems that leads. To national debt. Hans-Werner Sinn should actually know best how massive national debt is being racked up here. Because you can just print money out of thin air, and because it just doesn't work. Somehow, energy-backed money or Bitcoin isn't really energy-backed money either. But at least it's money that's secured by energy. If you don't have something like that. So, the proof-of-work algorithm is also there for a reason. That not just any Joe can come along and keep his Bitcoin at home. You can just print it out without any extra effort, or something like that. Or not printing it out, but you can mean it, or something like that. And that's what often isn't understood. Bitcoin miners are smart. They're using excess energy, renewable energy. People are, but they actually use excess energy. Let's say renewable energies and stuff like that. Here, it's also implemented by Bofinger. So here, the value is created through complexity. So because of that, the mining stuff, look back there, military on the scene, it's still here. How do you say? State of exception in El Salvador. I don't know if you guys saw that. Wait a minute, where do you see them? You can see them back there. Few soldiers are here on the scene. It's still a state of exception, but here it's really super safe. They don't do anything at all. They're very, very passive and all. But you do see police or military just hanging around every now and then. I actually lost my smartphone here earlier. Actually riding on the scooter. Totally stupid. Did my smartphone somehow fall out of my pocket? Then I couldn't find it anymore. So I rode back and forth on the scooter twice. I rode the route, then I walked it again. Still haven't found it. Then I went to a buddy's place and he basically called my phone. Then someone actually answered my phone. And then there was this young Spanish girl, but she couldn't speak any English. So I tried to talk to her with my terrible Spanish. Then I met up with her again. She found the phone. And then I was just super happy when I found my phone again. That also shows that there's really very little criminal activity going on here. In El Salvador, I actually gave her some money. Then she didn't even want the money because I was just happy that she found the phone. Then she didn't want the money at all. So I just handed her the money anyway because I was just so happy that she had the phone back. And yeah, accordingly, crime here is very, very low. At least that's my assessment. And also, I'd say people here aren't really interested in scamming others. And at least that's been my experience. In any case, it's basically implied here that the value of Bitcoin is created here, that mining brings some complexity into the system. And because it's so complex that no one really gets it anymore, is then assumed here that somehow this has some kind of value because there's some kind of complexity behind it. But that's obviously total bullshit. Because for the 1010th time or the 1021st time, that would be subjective. Then you also touch on the fact that Bitcoin is basically a chain letter here. It's just said, yes, just like the Crater Fools theory from before. That means we always have new people. Some folks just keep putting money in, and then more and more fools come along. The price of Bitcoin just keeps going up, up, up. But with a chain letter or a Ponzi scheme, you always need some kind of scammer and stuff. And Bitcoin is a decentralized system. There's no foundation behind it. There's no group or anything. There's no boss. There's no club. Or something like that, someone who's somehow skimming off the profits or something. That's just plain nonsense. And then it goes into that again, about the whole ban issue. Yeah, they should really ban Bitcoin, because that's just nonsense and blah, blah, blah. It's all just crap. If Bitcoin is nonsense, no need to ban it. People wouldn't use it. People wouldn't use Bitcoin, because then people just wouldn't use it automatically. People wouldn't use Bitcoin. They would just use fiat currencies, as far as I'm concerned, or whatever, you know. And that means, on one hand, you force people to use the euro to use the dollar. On the other hand, you're banning people here. Alternatives like Bitcoin, or then they say, let's ban gold too. We might as well ban all alternatives. As I said, I am not sure, 100% sure if Hans-Werner Sinn still sees it that way. Because actually, he's become very, very critical of the system lately. I'd say he criticizes the whole energy policy in Germany. The whole thing, yeah. Also the whole thing, he often criticizes the Target 2 system. And the whole story about how they're manipulating the national debt again, with the implicit and explicit debts. And that basically all these countries have a huge problem, that the euro construct is actually a huge figment of the imagination. And basically, Germany is the one that has to pay a lot into this. That we're also facing a potential loss of prosperity here, because our pension system is at its end. And I really think it's awesome what work he's doing. And he really has, I'd say, very good analytical skills. I always check out his IFO Institute. They talk a lot because they always throw out a few bangers. That's why. I don't understand why people might be misjudging Bitcoin a bit here, I'd say. Could be he might still get on the right track here. I definitely found it super interesting to take a look at the argumentation here and also share my little assessment on it. If you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below for you. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. And now here's my super recommendation for Bitcoin. Okay, never leave your Bitcoin on an exchange. Never. Or I mean, you can do it, of course. But you always have a third-party risk. Always be aware when you have your Bitcoin on an exchange. If you have your Bitcoin in some kind of ETF or something like that, then you're not self-sovereign. You always have a third-party risk. And you can get around that. If you just, for example, using a hardware wallet, if you're using, let's say, a tracer here, I always recommend a tracer. Look, you got to check this out here on the beach. Say hello, hello. From where? Germany. Yeah, Germany, Germany. Come visit us. Yeah, it's warm here. It must be cold. Yeah, it must be super cold. Okay, thanks for the startup. Yeah, a lot of Bitcoiners here, international Bitcoiners here. Yeah. Where were we again? Stayed. Exactly. You can get the TREZOR hardware wallet with the code Bitcoin Hotel for up to, no, even 10% off when you buy a hardware wallet. That's an absolute recommendation. 21 Bitcoin, TREZOR, self-custody. Always better, or usually preferred, before you have any third-party risks here. Let me know what you think about the massive accusations here. See you, take care. Peace out.